Food sleeps now, but it wasn't always this way. At night, the kitchen becomes a different place, not a room for movement or decisions or hunger. It becomes quiet, almost empty, a space that waits. The lights are off, the counters are still, the floor holds no footsteps, and in the darkness, one thing remains awake, a low, steady sound, barely noticeable, so familiar that it often disappears from attention. The refrigerator. It hums softly, not loudly enough to demand notice, not quietly enough to vanish completely, just present, just working. It keeps the cold inside. It holds the night in place. It guards what has been left behind. Food sleeps now. Milk rests behind a closed door. Vegetables remain unchanged. Leftovers wait without urgency. Nothing rushes. Nothing spoils in the dark. The refrigerator works so the house does not have to. The rest of the home is still. Bedrooms are dark. Breathing is slow. Time stretches gently. The kitchen, once the center of daily motion, now becomes a silent witness to rest. But this calm is recent. This quiet is modern. This sense of safety did not always exist. There was a time when the night brought uncertainty into this room, a time when food did not sleep. Before refrigeration, the kitchen at night was not a place of rest. It was a place of concern, of calculation, of quiet worry. Food was fragile. Time was an enemy, and darkness did not slow decay. Night did not protect meals. It only delayed their fate. In earlier homes, the kitchen never fully rested. Even after the fire dimmed, even after the final meal was eaten, the work continued in thought. What would last until morning? What needed to be eaten soon? What might already be turning? The night did not stop hunger. It only postponed it. Food required attention, constant attention. Not tomorrow, not later, now. Without cold, there was no pause. Without cold, food could not wait. In those kitchens, silence carried weight. Not peace, weight, the weight of knowing that time was always moving forward, even in sleep, even in darkness. Food did not sleep then. It aged, it changed, it spoiled, slowly, relentlessly. The night offered no protection. Cold was not something that lived inside walls. It came from the outside world, from winter, from deep earth, from ice and shadow and distance. And when it was gone, it could not be summoned. In summer, kitchens grew warm. In autumn, they smelled of harvest and urgency. In spring, they balanced hope with caution. Only winter offered true cold. And even then, it was temporary. People learned to work around this. They learned to adapt, to preserve, to transform food into something that could survive time. But survival required effort, constant effort. The night was not a break. It was a continuation. Food demanded awareness. The idea that food could simply be placed somewhere and forgotten until morning would have seemed impossible, unthinkable, a luxury beyond imagination. And yet, here we are, standing in a modern kitchen, at night, with nothing to do. The refrigerator hums. The rest of the room waits. Cold is no longer rare. It is constant. It does not come and go with seasons. It does not depend on geography. It does not melt away by morning. Cold has moved indoors. It has become mechanical, predictable, reliable. And because of that, food finally rests. This quiet relationship between cold and sleep is easy to overlook. It asks for nothing. It does not announce itself. It simply continues, night after night. The refrigerator does not need attention. It does not need fire. It does not need salt or smoke or earth. It asks only to remain closed. And inside, time slows. Not stops, never stops, but slows enough. enough to allow sleep, enough to allow rest, enough to remove urgency from the night. This is what modern cold has given us. Not abundance, not convenience, but peace. Peace from decay, peace from calculation, peace from the constant awareness of loss. The refrigerator watches over the night quietly. It does not glow brightly. Its light is hidden until invited. It waits, and when the door opens, briefly, softly, it reveals a controlled world. Shelves, containers, stillness. Then the door closes again, and the night returns. The sound resumes. Low, even, unchanging. It is a sound of continuity, a sound that says, nothing needs to be done right now. In earlier centuries, that sound did not exist. The night in the kitchen was filled with other noises. Wood settling, flies, rats, the faint scent of spoilage. Silence was rare, and when it came, it was not reassuring. Silence meant waiting, watching, hoping. The absence of cold made time loud. Every hour mattered. Every degree of warmth accelerated change. Food was not passive. It was active. It resisted preservation. It pushed against stillness. The night did not pause it. Only cold could do that, and cold was fleeting. But today, cold stays. It does not leave at sunrise. It does not depend on the weather. It remains. It keeps watch while we sleep. This quiet revolution did not arrive suddenly. It came slowly, in pieces, through trial and error, through noise and failure and adjustment. But here, at the end of that long story, the result feels effortless. The refrigerator hums, the kitchen sleeps, food rests. This calm is the product of centuries of struggle against time. And yet, tonight, none of that effort is visible. There are no tools laid out, no fires burning, no salt drying on surfaces, only a closed door, a faint sound, and darkness. The night no longer threatens what we will eat tomorrow. Cold has taken that responsibility. And so the kitchen becomes what it was never meant to be in the past. A place of rest, a place of waiting, a place where nothing urgent happens. Food sleeps now, and because it does, so can we. Before cold existed indoors, food was never still. It did not wait patiently. It did not pause. It did not rest simply because the sun had gone down. Food belonged to time, and time moved without mercy. In a world without artificial cold, food was always temporary. Every meal was borrowed. Every ingredient carried an invisible clock. People understood this deeply, not as a concept, but as a daily presence. Food was something that changed even when no one was watching, especially at night. The idea that darkness might protect food is a modern illusion. Night did not slow decay. It only hid it. Without cold, the night offered no safety. Meat softened, milk turned, bread hardened, fruit collapsed into sweetness and rot. The kitchen after sunset was not calm. It was uncertain. Silence did not mean stability. It meant waiting for change, and change always came. Smell was often the first warning. Not loud, not dramatic, just slightly wrong. A sweetness that should not be there, a sharpness in the air, a heaviness that suggested time had already done its work. Before refrigeration, the kitchen was guided by the nose as much as by the hands. Smell told the truth that sight could not. Food could look the same, but it rarely was. This made eating an urgent act. Meals were not planned around comfort. They were planned around survival. What could be eaten now? What had to be eaten now? Waiting was dangerous. The longer food sat, the more it resisted the body. The night did not pause this process. Darkness only removed supervision, and so food demanded decisions before sleep. What must be consumed tonight? What might last until morning? What was already lost? Food shaped the rhythm of the day not by hunger alone, but by fear. Fear of waste, fear of illness, fear of hunger returning sooner than expected. Without cold, abundance was fragile. A full table did not mean security. It meant responsibility. Responsibility to act quickly. Responsibility to transform food before time transformed it first. In warm climates, this urgency was constant. In cold climates, it was seasonal. But nowhere was food ever fully safe. Cold was not something people owned. It was something they borrowed. From winter, from night air, from deep stone, from shade. And borrowed things always had to be returned. In summer, the kitchen smelled alive, too alive. Flies gathered, moisture lingered, heat pressed into corners. Food reacted to this environment immediately. It softened, it fermented, it resisted stillness. Night did nothing to stop it. If anything, night made it worse. Without light, inspection became harder. Without movement, air stagnated. Food sat in its own warmth. The idea of leaving food untouched overnight was risky, and yet people did it because they had no choice. They learned to live with uncertainty. They learned to accept loss. Not every meal was saved. Not every harvest was preserved. Food did not promise tomorrow. It only offered now. This shaped how people ate. Meals were often larger than needed, not from indulgence, but from necessity. Better to eat too much than to let food spoil. Better to consume than to risk illness. Hunger tomorrow was safer than poison today. Without cold, restraint was a luxury. Speed was wisdom. Food demanded attention not once, but constantly. It could not be forgotten. A pot left overnight was not resting. It was changing. Every hour mattered. This made kitchens places of vigilance, even when no one was inside them. The kitchen did not sleep. It waited. It listened. It absorbed heat and smell and time. The absence of cold meant the presence of anxiety, not panic, not fear in the dramatic sense, but a low, continuous awareness, a background tension. Food required mental space. It followed people into sleep. Thoughts lingered. Will it last until morning? Should it be eaten now? Is it still safe? These questions had no perfect answers, only judgments, and judgments were often wrong. Illness was common, not because people were careless, but because control was limited. Food was alive in ways people could not always see. Night did not stop that life. It encouraged it. Without cold, food became a negotiation with time. People learned to work with that time. They salted, they smoked, they dried, they fermented, not to improve flavor, but to survive. These processes slowed decay, but never stopped it. They changed food into something else, something that resisted time a little longer. But every method had limits. Salt required quantity and effort. Smoke required fire and attention. Drying required air and patience. None of them were passive. None of them allowed forgetting. Cold would have allowed forgetting, but cold was rare. True cold was seasonal, and seasons could not be controlled. Winter brought relief. Food lasted longer. Meat could be hung outside. Milk stayed sweet. But winter was temporary, and it demanded its own preparation. Ice had to be harvested. Snow had to be packed. Cold had to be trapped. Even then, it escaped. When spring arrived, everything changed again. Without indoor cold, people lived inside cycles. Cycles of abundance and loss. Cycles of urgency and scarcity. Food dictated behavior. It shaped schedules. It determined when rest was possible. Night was not a reset. It was a continuation. In modern kitchens, night represents safety. In earlier kitchens, night represented risk. Darkness did not protect food. It concealed decay. The absence of light made smell and touch more important. People learned to test food cautiously, to sniff, to taste lightly, to discard reluctantly. Waste was painful. Every spoiled meal represented lost labor, lost time, lost opportunity. This made the relationship with food deeply emotional. Food was not neutral. It was precious and fragile. The idea that food could simply be stored and trusted was unimaginable. Trust required cold, and cold was outside, beyond walls, beyond control. Even wealthy households could not fully escape this reality. They had more options, more space, more resources, but not certainty. Without mechanical cold, no one truly owned time. Night belonged to decay. Silence belonged to change. Food did not rest. It worked quietly against itself, breaking down, transforming, resisting preservation. This constant movement gave food a presence even when untouched. It was never passive. It demanded respect. It demanded speed. In such a world, eating slowly was rare. Meals were not occasions of leisure. They were moments of decision. Eat now, or lose later. Food could not wait for comfort. Comfort had to wait for food. The absence of cold shaped human habits more deeply than most people realize. It shaped family size, meal structure, social gatherings. Large meals were shared quickly. Leftovers were dangerous. Planning was limited. Spontaneity was risky. Without cold, the future was shorter. The horizon of safety extended only hours ahead. Night did not lengthen that horizon. It shortened it. Darkness removed visibility. Warmth remained. Decay continued. Food demanded presence. And so sleep was lighter. Rest was incomplete. People slept knowing that time was still working, still changing what had been left behind. Only with cold would this relationship change. Only with cold would food finally be allowed to stop, to pause, to wait. But before that moment arrived, food lived fast, and so did the people who depended on it. Night was not a refuge for meals. It was a test. Cold was rare, and without it, nothing truly rested. Before cold could be created, it had to be found. Not invented, not controlled, found. People searched for cold in the places where the sun did not reach, where air moved slowly, where time felt heavier. They found it beneath their feet. The cellar was not a room. It was an extension of the earth, a descent, a movement downward, away from light, away from warmth, away from the living spaces above. Stone steps, uneven, worn by years of careful feet. The air changed with each step, cooler, damp, still. The smell was different here. Earth, mineral, moisture. A smell that did not promise safety, but suggested delay. Cellars did not stop decay. They slowed it. That was enough. The walls were thick, stone or packed earth, sometimes brick, always heavy. They held the temperature steady, not cold, but restrained. The ground absorbed heat during the day, released it slowly at night, never quickly, never completely. This slowness was the cellar's gift. Inside, light was scarce. A single candle, a weak oil lamp, or nothing at all. Darkness filled the corners. Food waited here not in comfort, but in suspension. Potatoes piled loosely, roots stacked carefully, barrels pressed against walls. Everything smelled of earth. Nothing felt clean. Hands touching food also touched soil, stone, wood. There was no separation between storage and nature. The cellar was not domestic. It was natural. Coolness here was uneven. Some corners colder than others, some shelves safer, some places known to spoil faster. Knowledge of the cellar was personal, learned slowly, through loss, through experience. People knew which spot to trust, which to avoid. But trust was never complete. Cellars offered no guarantees. They required vigilance. The earth breathed, moisture crept in, mold appeared quietly. The cellar was alive, not in the way food was alive, but in its own slow way. Water seeped through stone, condensation formed on walls, air remained heavy. This heaviness pressed against the body. Breathing slowed, sounds disappeared. Above, life continued. Footsteps, voices, fire. Below, there was silence, a deep, absorbing silence. The kind that wraps around the ears, the kind that makes even small movements noticeable. A footstep echoed. A breath felt loud. Time behaved differently here. Minutes stretched. There was no clear sense of passing hours. Only the steady presence of earth. Food stored in cellars was never forgotten. It demanded visits, checks, touch. A potato lifted and examined. A barrel opened slightly. A smell tested. The cellar did not allow distance. It required presence. This was not cold as we understand it now. This was compromise, an agreement with nature. The earth would slow decay, but only if respected, only if monitored, only if adjusted. Too much moisture ruined food. Too little dried it out. Too much warmth accelerated rot. Too much cold froze and damaged. Balance was delicate. Control was approximate. The cellar taught patience and humility. People could not command temperature. They could only respond to it. They listened, they felt, they learned. The floor was often uneven, dirt packed hard, stone cold beneath bare feet. The body sensed the difference immediately. A chill rising upward, not sharp, not biting, persistent. This chill stayed close to the ground. Food placed higher spoiled faster. Food placed lower lasted longer. Height mattered. Position mattered. Everything mattered. The cellar was not neutral space. It had character. Some were dry, some wet, some shallow, some deep, each one unique, each one imperfect. Darkness here was not complete. Shadows moved with the flame. Light revealed textures, rough stone, cracked wood, rusting metal hoops. The cellar was built slowly, often by hand, often without precision. Walls curved slightly. Corners were uneven. Nothing was sealed. Air found its way in. So did insects. So did rodents. The cellar was a boundary, not a barrier. Food was closer to survival here, but still vulnerable. The absence of exact control meant constant adjustment. Food was rotated, moved, consumed in sequence. Nothing was placed and forgotten. Forgetfulness was dangerous. This made food storage an active relationship, not passive, not automatic. The cellar required memory. People remembered which harvest was stored where, which barrel came from which season, which sack needed attention first. Food existed in layers of time. The cellar held those layers together, but loosely. Cold here was borrowed from the earth. Earth that changed slowly, but not predictably. Rain altered moisture. Heat waves raised temperature. Frost shifted balance. The cellar responded to the world above. It was not isolated. This made nights uncertain. Even with a cellar, food did not truly rest. It waited under watch. The darkness did not equal safety. It equalized conditions. It removed extremes, but it did not remove risk. The cellar offered a pause, not a solution. People understood this intuitively. They did not trust the cellar fully. They trusted it more than open air, more than kitchens, more than shelves, but not completely. Food stored underground was not sleeping. It was slowing down, holding its breath, waiting. This waiting had a weight to it, a tension. The cellar felt heavier than other rooms, not just physically, mentally. Standing inside, one felt the pressure of responsibility. Mistakes here were costly. A forgotten barrel, an unchecked corner. Loss happened quietly, often discovered too late. The smell told the story. The earth amplified it. Mold and rot were unmistakable. The cellar did not hide failure. It revealed it slowly. Cold, in this form, demanded effort. Descending stairs, carrying candles, navigating darkness. Each visit was intentional. This effort limited access. Food was not taken casually. Every trip underground required thought. This shaped eating habits. It slowed consumption. It added friction. The cellar created distance between hunger and satisfaction. That distance mattered. Food was valued differently, not because it was abundant, but because it was difficult. The cellar was a place of transition between harvest and meal, between abundance and scarcity. It was neither one nor the other. Earth held food in limbo, in suspension, cold enough to delay, warm enough to threaten, always imperfect. The absence of exact control meant acceptance. Acceptance of loss. Acceptance of change. Food would not be perfect. Some would be lost. Some would survive. The cellar did not promise equality. It offered chance. This shaped human expectations. People learned not to expect consistency. They learned to adapt meals to what survived. Menus were flexible. Plans adjusted. The cellar dictated options. This unpredictability followed people into sleep. Even at night, food was not fully at rest. The cellar worked quietly. The earth did its slow labor, breaking down, absorbing, cooling. The cellar was patient, but not protective. It delayed the inevitable. Nothing more. Still, compared to the world above, it felt like safety. A dim, cool refuge. A place where time slowed just enough. Enough to make tomorrow possible, but never guaranteed. Cold, here, was physical. It could be felt on the skin, in the bones. It rose from the floor. It wrapped around stored food. It lingered. This cold was uneven, alive, not standardized. It could not be adjusted with a dial. It could not be trusted blindly. This was cold as environment, not cold as tool. The cellar represented the closest thing to indoor cold for centuries. A compromise between nature and need. A partnership with the earth. But partnerships require attention, and attention does not allow rest. Food in the cellar waited. People watched. The night passed. Nothing truly slept. Only slowed. Only paused. Cold, borrowed from the earth, was never fully owned. And so control remained partial, imprecise, human. Only later would cold become exact, measured, reliable. But here, in the cellar, cold was felt, not controlled. And food remained awake, even in the dark. Before food could be trusted to wait, it had to be changed. Not gently, not passively, intentionally. Salt was one of the first tools used to argue with time. It did not stop decay. It resisted it. Salt drew moisture from food, and with moisture went life. This was understood long before it was explained. Hands rubbed crystals into flesh. Slowly, methodically, not hurried, never careless. Meat was turned, pressed, covered. Salt burned the skin, cracked it, altered it. Food became something else, something less alive, something less vulnerable. But this transformation required effort. Salt was heavy, costly, not always easy to obtain. It had to be carried, stored, used carefully. Too little failed, too much ruined. There was no exact measure, only experience, only memory. Salting was work done before rest, often late in the day, often into the evening. Food did not wait politely until morning. It demanded attention immediately. Night did not excuse delay. The hands that salted food were often tired. The light was dim. The air smelled sharp. Salt dried the skin, left residue under fingernails. It was not a clean process, but it was necessary. Food preserved by salt did not sleep peacefully. It hardened. It changed texture. It lost softness. Eating it later would require effort too. Soaking, cooking, patience. Preservation always moved labor forward in time. If food did not demand work now, it demanded it later. Salt did not create rest. It rearranged effort. Where salt could not reach, smoke followed. Smoke was slower, more deliberate. It wrapped food instead of touching it directly. Meat hung in dark spaces, above low fires, in rooms built for patience. Smoke crept upward, not rushed, not forced. It settled into fibers, into fat, into skin. The smell lingered. Wood mattered. Oak, hickory, fruit trees. Each one left its mark. Smoke did not just preserve, it transformed. Food took on the memory of fire, but smoking demanded time. Hours, days, sometimes weeks. Fires had to be watched, not fed too quickly, not allowed to die. Too much heat cooked the food, too little spoiled it. Balance was fragile. Night did not stop the process. If anything, night was when vigilance mattered most. Fires burned low, smoke thickened, air cooled. Someone had to stay awake. Someone had to listen. Crackling meant danger. Silence meant danger too. Smokehouses were not quiet places of rest. They were places of waiting, of watching, of restraint. Sleep came in fragments, between checks, between adjustments. Food demanded attention even after dark. Smoke did not allow abandonment. It required presence. The smell of smoke followed people into sleep, into clothes, into hair. It became part of daily life. Preserved food carried this smell with it, a reminder of effort, of nights spent awake. Where salt and smoke were not enough, time itself became a tool. Food was laid out, exposed to air, turned regularly. Drying required patience and faith. Too much humidity ruined everything. Too much sun cooked it. Too little air trapped moisture. Food dried slowly, shrinking, darkening, becoming lighter. This process was silent. No fire, no sound, just waiting. But waiting was work. Food had to be protected from insects, from animals, from sudden rain. Drying racks were checked constantly. Night brought uncertainty. Moisture returned with darkness. Dew settled. Air cooled. Food had to be brought inside, or covered, or turned again. There was no pause. Preservation followed the rhythm of the day and night. It did not respect sleep. Food required alignment with weather, season, and chance. Timing was everything. A single storm could undo days of effort. A single mistake could waste weeks. Time was not neutral. It was active, working either for or against preservation. People learned to read signs, wind direction, clouds, temperature shifts. They learned to anticipate. Night was not a time of rest. It was a risk. Food drying overnight was vulnerable. Animals moved at night. Moisture increased. Visibility decreased. Someone had to be aware. Someone had to decide. Preservation demanded vigilance. All these methods shared one thing. They required waiting. Waiting that was not restful. Waiting that was tense. Food could not be preserved quickly. It resisted shortcuts. Each process unfolded slowly. Salt took time to penetrate. Smoke took time to settle. Drying took time to complete. This waiting filled days and nights. It occupied thought. People slept lightly. woke to check, adjusted fires, turned food, covered racks. Preservation was not passive. It was an ongoing relationship, a conversation with decay. Food was never simply stored. It was managed, and management did not stop at sunset. Night did not bring relief. It brought uncertainty. Would the fire hold? Would the weather change? Would insects find the meat? Preservation pulled labor into the dark. Hands worked by lamplight, by firelight, by moonlight. Time was measured not by clocks, but by changes, texture, smell, color. These changes were subtle. They required attention, and attention does not sleep deeply. Food preservation shaped daily rhythms. Meals were planned around what had survived, not what was desired. Preserved food carried the memory of labor. It reminded people of nights spent awake, of effort invested earlier. Eating was never separate from preservation. They were linked. This is what it meant to live without cold. Food could not simply wait. It had to be worked on, changed, watched. The night was not a pause. It was part of the process. Preservation extended labor into hours meant for rest. Time itself became an ingredient, a demanding one. Only later would preservation become invisible. Only later would night return to rest. But here, in salt and smoke and drying air, the night belonged to work. Food did not sleep. People watched, they waited, and time continued to move. Before cold became ordinary, it was precious. Not a background condition, not a quiet constant, a possession. Ice was not something people expected. It was something they sought, and only a few could afford to keep it. Cold, in its purest form, arrived from elsewhere, from mountains, from frozen lakes, from winters that did not last. It came heavy and temporary, and it did not belong to everyone. Ice was a season made solid, a moment captured and carried, but moments resist being held. They melt. For most of history, ice was distant, seen from afar, felt briefly, lost quickly. To have ice when others did not was to possess time itself, and time, when captured as cold, demanded payment. Ice houses stood apart from ordinary storage. Thick walls, deep foundations. They were built not for comfort, but for resistance. Resistance against warmth, against sun, against inevitability. Inside, ice was stacked carefully, blocks wrapped in straw, layers separated by sawdust. Every detail mattered. Insulation was imperfect. Loss was expected. The goal was not preservation forever, only preservation long enough. Ice did not sleep. It shrank, slowly, relentlessly. Even untouched, it changed. The cold it carried leaked outward. The warmth of the world pressed inward. Ice demanded attention. It could not be forgotten. Those who owned ice understood this. They visited their stores, measured loss, adjusted coverings, rearranged blocks. Cold required care. This care was labor, and labor marked privilege. Ice was not free. It had to be harvested. Men walked onto frozen lakes at dawn, saw blades cut deep grooves. Ice cracked loudly, water surged beneath. Cold numbed hands, fingers stiffened, breath condensed. The work was dangerous. Falling meant death. Ice harvesting was not romantic. It was exhausting and temporary, only possible when nature allowed, only available in certain climates. Once cut, ice had to be moved, lifted, dragged, loaded. Horses strained, sleds groaned, blocks slid and collided. Every movement risked fracture. Ice broke easily. It punished carelessness. The journey did not end at the shore. Ice had to be transported further, sometimes far, from lakes to cities, from mountains to estates, from winter to summer. Time was the enemy. Every mile increased loss. Every delay mattered. Transport routes were chosen carefully. Night travel was preferred. Shadows protected ice. Daylight threatened it. Coal moved best when the world slept. But even then, melting continued. Quietly, constantly. Ice demanded speed and planning. Only the wealthy could afford such planning. Ice was not merely a resource. It was a signal, a symbol of control, of access, of separation. To serve chilled drinks in summer was to announce privilege. To preserve food beyond the season was to demonstrate power. Cold marked status. The poor knew ice differently, as something glimpsed, touched briefly, enjoyed in passing. The wealthy knew ice as something that stayed, for a while, long enough to matter. Ice boxes appeared in select homes, wooden chests lined with metal, ice placed carefully inside, food arranged around it. The lid closed. Time slowed, but not evenly. Ice boxes were imperfect. Cold gathered near the ice. Heat persisted at the edges. Food had to be rotated, moved, watched. Even luxury required vigilance. Ice melted, water collected. Drainage was necessary. Too much moisture spoiled food. Too little cold failed to preserve. Balance was delicate. Ice did not remove responsibility. It concentrated it. Those who owned ice employed others to manage it, to cut, to transport, to maintain. Cold required a network, an infrastructure, a system of labor that extended beyond the household. Ice connected winter labor to summer comfort. It linked distant landscapes to urban tables. This connection was fragile. Storms delayed shipments. Warm seasons shortened storage. A single heat wave could undo months of planning. Ice could not be trusted blindly. It required constant adjustment. This made cold expensive, not just in money, in attention, in coordination, in loss. For every block that reached the table, many more melted away. Cold existed briefly. It had to be used wisely. This transience shaped how ice was perceived. It was not background. It was event. When ice arrived, it mattered. When it was used, it was noticed. Food chilled by ice was treated differently, consumed with awareness, enjoyed with urgency, because cold would not last. Ice marked moments. It did not define environments. The presence of ice changed behavior. Meals planned around it. Storage decisions altered, but always temporarily. Ice never belonged to the night alone. It belonged to the calendar, to schedules, to availability. The night could slow melting, but it could not stop it. Even at night, ice diminished. Cold was never secure. This insecurity made ice precious and fragile. It could not be left unattended. It could not be assumed. It demanded respect. Even the wealthy lived with uncertainty. Ice did not grant peace. It granted opportunity. Opportunity to extend time slightly. Opportunity to delay decay, but always with awareness of loss. Ice was a reminder of limits, a controlled failure, a managed retreat from warmth. This shaped attitudes toward food. Food chilled by ice was not forgotten. It was checked, smelled, moved. Cold extended time, but not trust. The presence of ice introduced complexity. Households learned to manage gradients. Cold near the ice, warmth elsewhere. Knowledge developed. But knowledge was never enough. Ice resisted standardization. Each block melted differently. Each season varied. Each storage space behaved uniquely. Cold remained unpredictable. This unpredictability kept ice rare and valuable. Only later would cold become consistent, measured, reliable. But here, ice existed as a luxury, a fleeting possession, a fragile advantage. The contrast between ice and warmth was stark. Cold had edges. Warmth pressed constantly. The world leaned toward decay. Ice pushed back gently, briefly. Every use of ice acknowledged this struggle. Ice was not background noise, it was foreground effort. This made night important. Night slowed melting. Darkness protected ice. Owners timed deliveries, adjusted routines, moved food at night. Cold aligned with darkness. The night became an ally, but only partially. Ice melted even when unseen, even when untouched. It reminded people that cold was borrowed, not owned. And borrowed things require care. This care shaped architecture. Ice houses placed in shade, underground storage favored, thick walls, minimal openings, everything designed to resist warmth. But resistance was never complete. Ice was never safe. It was always disappearing. This disappearance created urgency. Food chilled by ice was not meant to wait indefinitely. It was meant to buy time, to create options, not to remove responsibility. Cold remained a task, a project, a managed resource. This is what made it luxury, not its effect, but its cost. Only those with means could afford continuous attention. Only those with resources could absorb loss. Only those with labor could maintain cold. Ice separated households, those who could pause time, and those who could not. But even among privilege, cold remained fragile. It could not be ignored. It could not be automated. Ice asked to be noticed, and so the night, even in wealthy homes, was not fully restful. Someone listened, someone checked, someone adjusted. Cold did not sleep. It faded, quietly, patiently, waiting for warmth to reclaim it. This fragility is easy to forget now. Cold feels permanent, unquestioned. But once, cold was rare, precious, and always at risk. Ice was a luxury because it demanded care, and care does not rest. Before cold could become a machine, it became a building. Not something that moved, not something that reacted, something that stood still. Ice houses were not inventions of convenience. They were inventions of patience, built to resist time, built to slow warmth, built to protect something that wanted to disappear. These structures were not meant to be seen. They were placed away from daily life, at the edge of estates, at the edge of towns, often partially hidden. Cold did not belong among people. It belonged below. The descent into an ice house was deliberate. Steps downward, light fading, air thickening. The temperature changed slowly, not abruptly, not dramatically, just enough to be felt. Walls grew thicker. Stone replaced wood. Earth pressed close. Ice houses borrowed their strength from mass. Weight was their technology. Thick walls did what tools could not. They absorbed heat, held it, released it reluctantly. The heavier the structure, the slower the change. This was the principle. Cold could not be created, so it had to be protected. Ice houses were shaped by this understanding. Many were circular. Curves resisted cracks, distributed pressure evenly. Straight lines were rare. Angles invited weakness. The earth above acted as insulation. Soil layered over stone. Grass growing on roofs. From the outside, some ice houses looked like hills. Unremarkable. Quiet. The cold inside slept under layers of indifference. Doors were small. Openings minimal. Every gap invited warmth. Every opening risked loss. Access was restricted. Not for secrecy, for survival. Inside, darkness ruled. Light was a threat. Heat followed flame. Visits were brief, purposeful, efficient. Ice was stacked carefully. Blocks separated by straw, by sawdust, by anything that trapped air. Air was an ally here. Still air slowed transfer. Movement accelerated loss. The ice house was designed to eliminate motion. No drafts, no flow, just stillness. Water from melting ice had to escape. Drainage channels cut into floors Sloped surfaces guided liquid away. Standing water increased decay. Everything inside worked toward delay. Not permanence, delay. The icehouse accepted loss as inevitable. Its goal was to make loss slow. This acceptance shaped design. Nothing was ornate, nothing decorative. Every feature had purpose. Thickness mattered more than beauty. Location mattered more than comfort. The icehouse was not a room. It was a container, a pause in time, cold stored like a memory, waiting. The deeper the ice, the safer it felt. Surface ice melted first. Protected layers endured. This encouraged vertical storage. Depth was safety. The earth helped. Temperature underground changed slowly. Day and night mattered less. Seasons blurred. The icehouse existed in a different rhythm. Above, the world moved. Below, time stretched. At night, the contrast deepened. The surface cooled. The earth released heat. Balance improved. Night favored the ice. Darkness protected it from sun. Silence protected it from disturbance. This made night the icehouse's ally. The ice slept best when the world slept. Owners understood this intuitively. Ice was checked at night, moved at night, delivered at night. Darkness was not fear. It was insulation. The architecture of icehouses was shaped by listening. Listening to melt, to drip, to silence. A steady drip meant loss. A sudden sound meant fracture. Silence meant stability. The icehouse was one of the quietest structures humans built. Not because sound was forbidden, but because sound meant change. Change meant danger. The walls absorbed noise. Stone muffled echoes. Earth swallowed vibration. Even footsteps softened. Standing inside an icehouse felt different. The body slowed. Breath became visible. Movement felt unnecessary. The space discouraged urgency. Everything here was meant to wait. Icehouses were early lessons in environmental control, not through force, through cooperation. They did not fight heat directly. They avoided it. They hid from it. They leaned into inertia. This approach required humility. Builders accepted limits. They did not expect perfection. They expected endurance. Icehouses were expensive, not in ornament, in material. Stone required labor. Excavation took time. Transport was slow. Construction demanded foresight. These structures were built years before they were truly needed. An investment in future summers, in future scarcity. This long planning horizon separated icehouses from ordinary storage. They represented confidence. Confidence that the future would arrive. Confidence that ice would be needed then. And confidence that it could be kept. But even with all this effort, icehouses were never certain. A hot year could overwhelm them. A poorly sealed door could undo months of preservation. A crack in stone could invite warmth. Cold remained fragile. Architecture reduced risk. It did not eliminate it. This fragility kept icehouses quiet. No celebrations, no gatherings. They were not spaces for people. They were spaces for restraint. The night image returns here naturally. The icehouse at night is almost invisible. No light escapes. No sound emerges. It rests beneath the ground. The ice sleeps deeply, protected by stone, covered by earth, watched by silence. Above, the air cools. The stars move. Below, nothing moves at all. This stillness was intentional. Movement introduced heat. Heat introduced loss. The icehouse was a refusal to participate in daily life, a withdrawal. Cold was kept separate. This separation mattered. Food brought to the icehouse entered a different state. It crossed a threshold, from ordinary time into slowed time. But this crossing was limited. Only certain foods went there, only valuable ones. Ice houses did not serve everyone. They served what mattered most: delicacies, medicines, perishables. The ordinary still spoiled. Cold remained selective. This selectivity reinforced privilege. Ice houses marked estates, institutions, places with resources. But even there, cold demanded discipline. Rules governed access. Doors opened rarely. Entries recorded mentally. Every visit weighed against loss. The ice house was never casual. It commanded respect. This respect shaped behavior. People lowered voices, moved carefully, closed doors gently. The architecture itself encouraged this. Low ceilings, narrow passages. Nothing invited lingering. Everything encouraged efficiency. The ice house taught restraint. It trained people to think long-term, to accept delay, to respect limits. In this way, architecture shaped habit. Cold was not just stored, it was taught. The idea that cold could be preserved through design was revolutionary, but incomplete. The ice house was the peak of passive cold. After it, the next step required movement, mechanism, energy. But here, in stone and earth, cold remained static. It waited. The ice slept. It did not hum. It did not respond. It did not adjust. It endured. At night, this endurance felt complete. The outside world cooled. The balance improved. Loss slowed further. Night wrapped the ice house in protection. This is why ice houses were quietest at night, safest at night, closest to success. Yet even then, melting continued, slowly, unnoticed. The ice house did not promise eternity. It promised delay, a carefully engineered delay. This delay changed how people thought about food. It introduced the idea that environment could be shaped, that time could be influenced, not stopped, but guided. The ice house was not a machine, but it was a concept, a step toward control. Still, control remained partial. Cold still demanded attention. The ice house reduced effort. It did not remove it. Someone still checked levels, still monitored loss, still adjusted insulation. The ice slept, but lightly. The architecture protected it, but only if respected. This quiet dependence made ice houses sacred in a way, not spiritually, practically. They were places where effort accumulated, where planning materialized, where patience took form. The night image lingers, an ice house beneath the ground, stone holding earth, earth holding cold, cold holding time. Nothing moves, nothing speaks. The ice sleeps deeply, and in that sleep, the future waits. Cold did not enter the home quietly. It arrived with effort, with motion, with sound. The first mechanical refrigerators were not gentle. They did not hum softly. They did not disappear into the background. They announced themselves. Before cold became invisible, it was mechanical, heavy, uncertain, demanding. These early machines were rare, not because people did not want them, but because few could tolerate them. They were expensive, unreliable, and loud. Cold, for the first time, was no longer borrowed from nature. It was forced, driven by pressure, by compression, by movement. And movement makes noise. The earliest mechanical refrigerators were closer to industrial tools than household companions. They belonged in breweries, in meat-packing facilities, in laboratories, places already filled with sound. They were not meant for kitchens, not meant for sleep. The idea that such a machine could share space with rest would have seemed unreasonable. These early systems relied on cycles: gas compressed, heat expelled, pressure released. Each step required motion. Valves opened and closed, pistons moved, liquid circulated. Nothing stood still. The sound was constant, clanking, hissing, rhythmic but not soothing. It was the sound of work, and work did not belong to the night. Homes were places of quiet. Machines disrupted that balance. The first refrigerators vibrated. They shook floors. They rattled walls. Their presence changed the character of a room. Silence retreated. This made people cautious. Cold had been fragile before. Now it was aggressive. It demanded space, attention, tolerance. These machines failed often. Leaks occurred. Pressure systems broke. Gas escaped. Repairs were frequent. And repairs were loud. The refrigerator did not simply exist. It required supervision, maintenance, understanding. Early users learned quickly that mechanical cold was not passive. It demanded interaction. The machine had moods. It responded to temperature, to load, to environment. It behaved differently at night. Cooler air improved efficiency, but sound carried further. At night, noise traveled. Walls felt thinner. What was tolerable during the day became intrusive after dark. The refrigerator did not respect sleep. It did not slow down when people rested. It worked continuously, relentlessly. Its cycles did not align with human rhythms. This mismatch created discomfort. The night had always been a time when labor receded. Even preservation rituals had their pauses. Machines erased those pauses. Cold, now active, no longer slept. But it also did not allow others to sleep easily. This tension shaped how early refrigerators were used. They were placed away from bedrooms, away from living spaces, in basements, in sheds, in separate rooms. Distance was the solution. Sound required separation. The refrigerator was not a companion. It was a servant kept out of sight. Only later would it be invited fully inside. Early advertisements emphasized function, not comfort. They spoke of efficiency, of control, of progress, not of peace, not of quiet. These machines were symbols. They represented modernity, industry, the future. But the future, at first, was noisy. Cold had been silent when borrowed from earth. It had been still. Mechanical cold was restless. It moved constantly. This movement created anxiety. What if it stopped? What if it failed? What if pressure built too high? These were not abstract fears. They were common experiences. Breakdowns were normal. Repairs were expected. Cold could vanish suddenly. Food could be lost overnight. Mechanical failure replaced natural unpredictability. One uncertainty exchanged for another. The difference was sound. Nature failed quietly. Machines failed loudly. A broken cellar simply warmed. A broken machine screamed. Leaks hissed. Valves snapped. The night, once quiet, filled with unfamiliar noises. This disturbed trust. People did not trust early refrigerators with their sleep. They trusted them with tasks, with preservation, but not with silence. These machines were tolerated, not embraced. Their presence was conditional. They were guests, not family members. Cold had entered the home, but it had not settled. Its behavior was disruptive. The night was no longer a refuge. The refrigerator worked harder at night. Ambient temperatures dropped. Efficiency improved. But sound did not diminish. In fact, it became more noticeable. The absence of daytime noise amplified it. What blended into background during daylight became intrusive after dark. The refrigerator did not understand context. It did not adapt. It followed its cycle regardless of human needs. This mechanical indifference marked a shift. For the first time, cold operated independently. It no longer required human hands, but it also did not respond to human rhythms. The night suffered. People adapted. They closed doors. They insulated rooms. They learned to ignore. or they removed machines entirely. Many early refrigerators were turned off at night. Cold was paused to reclaim silence, food sacrificed for rest. This choice reveals priorities. Silence still mattered more than preservation. Sleep still outweighed convenience. Cold had to earn its place. Over time, improvements followed. Motors became smaller, compressors quieter, designs refined. But in the beginning, cold was intrusive. It disrupted established patterns. It challenged the idea of the night as restful. The first mechanical refrigerators were transitional objects. They did not belong fully to the world of earth and ice, nor to the future of quiet hums. They were loud experiments, necessary failures, steps towards something gentler. In these early years, cold was no longer fragile, but it was not yet peaceful. It had strength, but no grace, power, but no subtlety. The night resisted it. People resisted it. They wanted cold, but they wanted silence more. This tension shaped development. Engineers listened. Manufacturers learned. Cold had to adapt to human life, not the other way around. The refrigerator could not remain industrial. It had to become domestic. It had to soften. The night demanded it. This demand would reshape technology. Soundproofing improved. Vibration reduced. Motors enclosed. The machine slowly learned restraint. But here, at the beginning, restraint was absent. The refrigerator was all motion, all effort. It worked as hard at midnight as at noon. It did not care who slept. This made early mechanical cold exhausting. It added labor indirectly. People slept lighter, woke more often, listened involuntarily. The night became filled with unfamiliar rhythms. Clanks replaced silence. Hisses replaced stillness. Cold was present, but peace was not. This is easy to forget now. Modern refrigerators hum quietly. They blend into the night. They have learned to wait. But the first ones did not know how. They had not yet learned the language of rest. They had not yet learned how to disappear. They existed loudly, and in doing so, they revealed a truth. Cold alone was not enough. Preservation alone was not enough. For cold to truly belong in the home, it had to learn silence. It had to learn the night. And that lesson would take time. For the first time, cold stayed awake so people could sleep. This change did not arrive suddenly. There was no clear night when everything felt different at once. Cold entered the home quietly, cautiously, almost apologetically. At first, the refrigerator did not belong in the kitchen. The kitchen was a place of fire, of heat, of movement. Cold had always existed elsewhere, underground, outside, in distant buildings. To bring cold into the kitchen felt unnatural. And yet, it happened, slowly, one household at a time. The refrigerator appeared as a large object, heavy, often awkward. It did not match the furniture. It did not match the rhythm of the room. It stood apart, but it stayed. Families learned to live around it. At first, it changed little. Food was still cooked daily. Meals were still planned carefully. Preservation habits did not disappear overnight. But something subtle began to shift. Food could wait, not forever, but longer. Leftovers became possible. Milk lasted. Meat did not demand immediate attention. This changed the rhythm of the day. Small decisions no longer carried urgency. What once required action before night could now be postponed. The night began to soften. In ordinary homes, this mattered deeply. Not estates, not institutions, ordinary kitchens, where work was constant, where labor followed hunger. The refrigerator did not remove work, but it rearranged it. Tasks moved earlier or later. They no longer clustered at dusk. The evening slowed. Meals became less frantic. Eating did not feel like a race against decay. This altered how families experienced time. The kitchen became quieter at night, not silent, but calmer. The fire was out. The dishes were done. Food no longer waited anxiously on shelves. It waited behind a closed door. Cold held it. This was new. For the first time, food could be trusted with the night. This trust changed sleep. People rested differently. They did not wake thinking of food. They did not plan meals half asleep. The background anxiety faded. Slowly, almost unnoticed, cold took on responsibility. It did the watching. The refrigerator became a guardian, not dramatic, not visible, just present. In the kitchen, its place settled. It was no longer an intruder. It became furniture, part of the room, part of the routine. Children grew up with it. They did not know kitchens without cold. To them, food had always slept. The refrigerator's sound softened over time. Design improved, motors quieted. The night reclaimed silence. Cold learned restraint. It worked continuously, but gently, barely noticeable. A low hum, a presence that reassured rather than disturbed. For the first time, cold adapted to human rhythms. It stayed awake, but it did so quietly. This was the true transformation. Not cold itself, but its behavior. The refrigerator learned to disappear, and in doing so, it reshaped domestic life. Food planning changed, shopping patterns shifted, meals became flexible. The future extended further, not days, but weeks. The horizon of safety widened. This affected family life. People spent less time managing food, more time resting. Evenings grew longer. Nights grew deeper. Sleep improved. The refrigerator did not demand attention. It did not ask to be watched. It did not require ritual. It simply worked. This reliability changed expectations. People began to expect stability, to assume tomorrow would be manageable. Cold became background. And because it became background, it became powerful. The kitchen transformed. Once a site of constant vigilance, it became a place of pause. The refrigerator marked this shift. It stood quietly, its door closed. Inside, time slowed. This allowed the kitchen to rest. Not completely, but enough. The refrigerator did not eliminate uncertainty. Power could fail. Machines could break. But the daily fear eased. The immediate pressure lifted. Cold absorbed it. This change affected social life. Meals could be shared differently. Leftovers allowed hospitality. Guests stayed longer. Food remained. Waste decreased. Planning loosened. Life felt less rigid. Cold enabled flexibility. But this flexibility was not celebrated loudly. It slipped into routine. It became normal. This is how revolutions truly settle. They become invisible. The refrigerator did not announce itself as a miracle. It simply stayed. And because it stayed, habits changed. The night became a boundary again, a separation between days, not a continuation of labor. Food no longer demanded nighttime attention. It no longer pulled thought into sleep. The refrigerator worked, so people did not have to. This is the meaning of that sentence. For the first time, cold stayed awake, so people could sleep. Cold took the night shift. It assumed responsibility. It held decay at bay. It did not rest, but it allowed others to. This shift altered the emotional texture of home. Anxiety softened. Routine stabilized. Trust grew. The refrigerator did not need gratitude. It did not ask for acknowledgement. Its success was measured by absence, by the absence of worry, by the absence of urgency, by the absence of smell, by the absence of night labor. Cold became part of care, invisible care. The kitchen at night felt different. It felt complete, closed, finished. Food waited. People slept. This was not true before, even in wealthy homes, even with ice. Cold had never been this dependable. Now it was. The refrigerator became a quiet promise, not of abundance, but of continuity, of tomorrow, of rest. This promise reshaped domestic architecture. Kitchens were designed around cold, layouts changed, storage moved indoors, food returned to the center of the home, not as a risk, but as something safe. The refrigerator normalized cold. It removed its drama. No more ice deliveries. No more seasonal planning. No more nightly checks. Cold stayed. Always. And because it stayed, it faded from thought. This fading allowed something else to grow. Trust. Trust that the night would pass without consequence. Trust that food would remain. Trust that sleep would not be interrupted. Cold became invisible labor. And invisible labor is the most transformative kind. It changes life without demanding recognition. This is why the refrigerator mattered. Not because it preserved food, but because it preserved rest. It restored the night to the home. The night could finally be night. A pause, a break, a silence. Food slept, and people did too. There was a moment when food stopped rushing. It did not announce this change. It did not arrive with ceremony. It simply happened. Food began to wait. Not because people asked it to, not because habits demanded it, but because it could. For most of human history, food existed in motion. It moved toward decay. It moved toward urgency. It moved toward decision. Food carried pressure. Pressure to be eaten. Pressure to be transformed. Pressure to be managed. Night did not remove this pressure. It amplified it. But now, something had changed. Food no longer hurried. It no longer demanded attention before sleep. It no longer pulled thought into the dark. Food rested. This was not rest in the human sense, not sleep, but suspension, a slowing so complete that it felt like stillness. The refrigerator created this stillness quietly, without words, without instruction. It did not tell food to wait. It made waiting possible. The night became an ally, not an obstacle, not a risk. The night wrapped around the kitchen differently now. Darkness felt complete, finished, closed. Food did not continue working after sunset. It paused. The refrigerator held it in place. This pause altered the meaning of the home. Homes had always been places of shelter, from weather, from danger, from cold. But now they became places of temporal shelter, places where time slowed. The refrigerator did not stop time. It bent it, just enough to remove urgency, enough to allow forgetting. Food could be forgotten. This was new. Forgetting food had once meant loss. Now it meant trust. Trust that the night would pass quietly. Trust that nothing would change without permission. Trust that decay would wait. This trust reshaped daily rhythms. People stopped thinking about food as something fragile. They began to think of it as something stable, not permanent, but dependable. This dependability extended the horizon of thought. Tomorrow became clearer. Next week imaginable. Planning relaxed. Meals no longer anchored every evening. The night loosened. Sleep deepened. The mind, no longer tracking food, found space. The refrigerator removed a layer of vigilance, a layer that had existed for centuries. People did not notice its disappearance. They only noticed rest. The house changed with this shift. Not physically at first, but emotionally. The kitchen no longer carried tension at night. It felt complete, finished. There was no sense of unfinished business. No need to check. No need to decide. The door closed. The light went out. Food rested. This changed how people moved through their homes at night. They passed the kitchen without thought, without hesitation, without concern. The kitchen became neutral, not demanding, not active, just present. The refrigerator's presence absorbed responsibility. It took over the task of watching. And because it watched, people could withdraw. This withdrawal was subtle. It did not feel like relief. It felt like normality. Food waiting overnight became ordinary, and ordinary things reshape life more deeply than dramatic ones. Food resting overnight meant mornings changed too. Breakfast no longer began with assessment. No sniffing, no testing, no calculation. Food emerged unchanged. The night had not altered it. This consistency created confidence. Confidence created calm. The home settled into a new rhythm, a rhythm where night truly divided days, where sleep was a pause, not a continuation. The refrigerator enforced this boundary gently. It separated today from tomorrow. It held the line. Food remained on one side. People rested on the other. The idea of night shifted. Night was no longer a time when food demanded thought. It became a time when thought could recede. The night became protective, not just of bodies, of minds. This alliance between cold and night was unprecedented. Previously, cold had belonged outside, or underground, or to special buildings. Now it belonged to the home. And because it belonged, it became intimate. The refrigerator was not admired. It was trusted. Trust is quiet. It does not announce itself. It settles. Food resting overnight introduced patience into daily life. People learned to wait without anxiety. They learned to leave things unfinished. This had effects beyond food. It softened expectations. It allowed imperfection. The home became less reactive, more forgiving. The refrigerator did not just change kitchens, it changed tempo. Life slowed slightly, enough to be felt, not enough to be noticed consciously. This slowness accumulated. It changed evenings. Dinner did not mark a deadline anymore. It became one moment among many. Food could wait until tomorrow. And because it could wait, people could stop. Stop moving. Stop deciding. Stop preparing. The night reclaimed its role. Darkness no longer concealed urgency. It revealed completion. Everything that needed to be done was done. Food was handled. Time was managed. Nothing remained unresolved. This sense of closure mattered. It allowed the body to relax. Sleep deepened when nothing pulled at attention. The refrigerator removed one of the oldest pulls, the pull of decay. Decay no longer threatened the night. It waited, held back. The home absorbed this change. Walls felt thicker. Doors felt more secure. The house felt finished at night. This completeness altered perception. People felt safer, not because danger disappeared, but because responsibility narrowed. Cold carried part of the burden. Food resting overnight also changed relationships. Meals became less charged, less urgent. Sharing food felt easier. There was no pressure to finish everything. Leftovers became acceptable. Waste reduced. Generosity increased. The refrigerator extended kindness through time. It allowed food to wait for others. This waiting was gentle, non-demanding. Food no longer insisted on immediate consumption. It accepted delay. This acceptance mirrored human needs. People need pauses. They need nights without tasks. They need spaces where nothing is required. The refrigerator created such a space. Quietly, persistently. The night became predictable. Predictability reduced fear. Fear had always accompanied food. Fear of loss, fear of illness, fear of hunger. These fears softened. They did not disappear entirely, but they lost their urgency. The refrigerator absorbed them. It became a buffer between time and decay, between night and worry. The house felt calmer because one layer of uncertainty was removed. This calm extended outward into neighborhoods, into cities. When food could rest overnight, supply chains relaxed, markets changed, shopping rhythms shifted. But inside the home, the effect was intimate, personal. The refrigerator did not announce progress. It enacted it silently. Food resting overnight allowed nights to become empty, empty of tasks, empty of vigilance, empty of concern. This emptiness was not void. It was space, space for rest, space for thought to drift, space for dreams. The house held this space. The refrigerator guarded it. The night passed without interruption. The morning arrived unchanged. Food waited, ready. This repetition built trust. Night after night, day after day. Trust accumulated. Trust became habit. Habit became invisibility. The refrigerator disappeared into routine. Its success lay in being unnoticed. Food resting overnight felt natural, inevitable, as if it had always been this way. This illusion of permanence is powerful. It hides the effort that made it possible. But at the level of experience, effort no longer mattered. Only outcome, only rest. The home became a place where time slowed reliably, where the night did not threaten continuity. Food resting overnight symbolized something larger, the ability to pause life without consequence, to step away, to sleep, to trust that things would remain. This trust is foundational. It allows societies to plan, individuals to rest, homes to feel safe. The refrigerator provided a small but crucial piece of this foundation. Cold stayed awake. Food rested. The night became an ally. The home changed, not dramatically, but completely. At night, there is a sound that most people no longer hear. It is not loud. It does not demand attention. It does not interrupt thought. It is simply there. A low hum, steady, even, unchanging. The refrigerator speaks quietly, not in words, not in messages, in presence. This sound does not move forward. It does not build. It circles. A soft vibration that fills the background, so constant that the mind releases it. At first, people noticed it. They heard it clearly. The hum was new, unfamiliar. It marked a machine at work. But over time, something happened. The sound blended. It lost its edges. It became part of the night. The refrigerator does not hum continuously. It breathes. It works, then pauses. A cycle. The motor engages. A faint vibration begins. Barely enough to be felt. Barely enough to be heard. Then it settles. The sound holds, not rising, not falling, just existing. This is the sound of balance. The refrigerator is not rushing. It is maintaining, holding temperature, holding time. When the motor stops, there is a pause, a small silence, then a click. Soft, dry, precise. The sound of completion. The system rests briefly, then waits. These pauses matter. They give shape to the night. Without them, the hum would feel endless. With them, it feels alive, responsive, but not demanding. The click is not sharp. It does not startle. It signals transition, from work to rest, from movement to stillness. The refrigerator understands rhythm now. It did not always. Early machines were constant. They worked without pause, without listening. Modern refrigeration learned restraint. It learned when enough was enough. The hum retreats. The night expands. Silence returns, but altered. It carries the memory of sound. The ear does not reset. It relaxes. The refrigerator has trained it to. This training is subtle. It takes years. Children grow up with this sound. They do not question it. They do not register it consciously. The hum becomes part of sleep, a backdrop, a reassurance. The refrigerator does not announce itself. It blends with distant traffic, with wind, with the building settling. It joins the orchestra of night, and then disappears. People no longer hear the refrigerator. They hear absence. They hear what remains when nothing is wrong. The hum signals normality. When it stops unexpectedly, the night feels strange, too quiet. Something is missing. The sound has become a marker of safety, of continuity. The refrigerator hum is not musical. It does not vary. It does not entertain. It stabilizes. It tells the body that systems are working, that food is held, that nothing requires action. This is why it fades from attention. The mind ignores what does not threaten. The refrigerator learned to sound unimportant. This was a design choice. Engineers worked towards silence. Not absolute silence, but acceptable silence. Silence that feels natural. Silence that does not compete with rest. Materials changed. Motors improved. Vibrations dampened. Sound was shaped, not eliminated. The refrigerator became quieter by becoming more predictable. Irregular sounds alarm the brain. Regular sounds soothe it. The hum is regular. The click is expected. The pause is reassuring. The cycle repeats. Night after night. The refrigerator teaches the house how to sleep. Its sound becomes part of the architecture. Walls absorb it. Floors soften it. Distance reduces it. In a quiet home, the hum is clearer. In a busy one, it disappears entirely. Either way, it does its work. The refrigerator does not demand to be heard. It accepts invisibility. This acceptance is what makes it successful. People sleep through its cycles, through its pauses, through its work. The refrigerator stays awake, but it does so quietly. The sound of modern refrigeration is a sound of trust. Trust that nothing will change suddenly. Trust that decay is being managed. Trust that the night will pass uneventfully. This trust allows the body to release vigilance. Breathing slows. Muscles soften. The hum becomes part of the background of dreams. Even when noticed briefly, it does not disturb. It reassures. The click happens, then silence, then the hum returns. This repetition creates familiarity. Familiarity creates comfort. Comfort deepens rest. The refrigerator's sound is one of the few machine sounds designed not to be heard, not because silence is achieved, but because attention is released. This is different from absence. It is presence without demand. The refrigerator does not ask the listener to engage. It does not offer information. It simply continues. In this way, it mirrors the night itself. The night is not empty. It is full of quiet processes. Air moves, temperature shifts, buildings settle. The refrigerator joins these processes. It becomes natural. People often say they cannot sleep in complete silence. They need something. A fan, distant noise, a steady presence. The refrigerator provides this unintentionally. It fills the gap. It smooths the edges of silence. Pure silence can be unsettling. It amplifies internal noise. The refrigerator's hum gives the mind something to rest against. A gentle anchor. The click marks time, not in hours, in cycles. It is a quiet clock, measuring stability rather than progress. The refrigerator does not move time forward. It holds it. The sound reflects this. It does not accelerate. It does not slow dramatically. It maintains. This maintenance is the heart of modern cold. Not creation, not preservation as struggle. but maintenance as background. The sound of refrigeration tells a story of maturity. Cold no longer announces itself. It has learned to belong. It has learned to be small. This smallness is intentional. It respects the night. It respects sleep. The refrigerator does not compete with dreams. It supports them by removing the need to wake, by removing the need to worry, by holding food steady. The sound has faded into architecture, into routine, into expectation. People only notice it when it changes, when it grows louder, when it stops. Then the night feels wrong. The hum is missed. This absence reveals how deeply the sound has embedded itself. It has become part of the definition of night. A modern night includes this sound. Without it, the silence feels incomplete. The refrigerator has succeeded when it is unnoticed. Its sound is not a feature. It is a condition, a sign that the system is working, that decay is paused, that the night is safe. The click, the pause, the hum, they repeat. They do not vary. They do not surprise. This predictability calms the nervous system. The refrigerator has learned human language, not speech, but rhythm. The rhythm of sleep. It matches it. It stays awake, quietly, so the house can rest. And because the sound is no longer noticed, the night feels whole, uninterrupted, complete. Time used to be sharp. It pressed against the day. It leaned into decisions. It demanded attention. Time was not something people managed. It was something they reacted to. Food spoiled. Light faded. Warmth shifted. Every change required response. And because of this, the future felt short. Tomorrow existed, but not clearly. It was uncertain, fragile, dependent on many small variables. Without cold, time was immediate. It arrived quickly, and it carried consequences. Food made this visible. Food showed how little control people had. A meal delayed could be a meal lost. A decision postponed could become regret. Time punished hesitation. This shaped how people lived. They planned tightly. They acted quickly. They slept lightly. The night did not soften time. It sharpened it. Darkness removed visibility. Uncertainty increased. People went to sleep knowing that things were changing without them. Food changed. Temperature shifted. Moisture gathered. The future moved closer. This proximity of consequences created tension. The mind stayed alert. Sleep was shallow. Control was partial. But then, slowly, control extended. Not suddenly, not completely. Cold created a buffer, a distance between now and later. Food no longer reacted instantly to time. Time slowed, not in clocks, in experience. The refrigerator did not alter hours. It altered expectations. It made tomorrow feel reachable, safe. Food would remain. Meals could be planned. Decisions could wait. This waiting mattered. It reshaped the relationship with time. Time stopped being an adversary. It became something that could be organized. Predictability entered the home, not as a guarantee, but as a baseline. Food would last overnight. Usually, milk would be fine. Leftovers would remain unchanged. This reliability created rhythm. Shopping became scheduled. Cooking became flexible. Planning extended beyond the day. The horizon moved outward, from hours to days, from days to weeks. This expansion reduced fear. Fear thrives in short horizons. When consequences are immediate, anxiety follows. When consequences are delayed, the mind relaxes. Cold delayed consequences. This delay felt like control. Not absolute control, but enough. Enough to rest. Enough to stop checking. Enough to trust. The refrigerator did not promise perfection. It promised consistency. Consistency is calming. It removes surprise. The nervous system responds to patterns. Predictable patterns reduce vigilance. The refrigerator created such a pattern. Food remained stable, night after night. This repetition built confidence. Confidence built routine. Routine built calm. Time became less threatening. It stopped feeling like a countdown. It became a sequence. Morning followed night. Food remained. Nothing demanded immediate action. This predictability changed how nights were experienced. Night no longer carried tasks forward. It ended them. The day closed. The night began. Nothing spilled over. This separation mattered. It allowed mental boundaries. Boundaries create rest. When tasks are unfinished, the mind stays engaged. When tasks are complete, the mind releases. Cold helped complete tasks earlier. Food storage became final. No need to revisit. No need to reconsider. The refrigerator closed the loop. This closure created safety. Safety is not the absence of danger. It is the absence of constant monitoring. The refrigerator reduced monitoring. It watched so people did not have to. This delegation of vigilance changed sleep. People slept knowing that one category of concern was handled. Not by them, by something else. This is what control feels like. Not power, but trust. Trust that systems will behave as expected. Trust that the night will pass quietly. Trust that tomorrow will resemble today. This trust softened life. It allowed planning without anxiety. Planning stopped being defensive. It became neutral. Menus could be written. Lists could be made. Schedules could be followed. None of this was dramatic. It simply felt easier. Time stopped feeling hostile. It became a container, something to fill, not something to outrun. The refrigerator was one of the first household tools to offer this kind of temporal stability. Not through speed, but through delay. It slowed decay. Decay had always been the visible edge of time. When decay slowed, time felt less aggressive. This aggression had shaped behavior for centuries. Now it receded. The refrigerator normalized the idea that tomorrow could be managed, that tomorrow could be planned without fear. Fear did not disappear. Power outages happened, machines broke, but fear moved from constant to occasional. This reduction mattered. Constant fear exhausts. Occasional fear can be handled. The night became quieter because fear softened. People no longer woke to check. They no longer listened for signs of spoilage. They no longer calculated in the dark. The night belonged to rest again. Predictability extended beyond food. It influenced how people thought about work, about schedules, about commitments. If food could wait, other things could too. Life slowed slightly, not noticeably, but enough to be felt. This feeling accumulated over years, over generations. Children grew up in homes where food rested. They learned predictability early. They learned that nights were safe, that mornings would be similar. This shaped their nervous systems. Stability became expected. This expectation is powerful. It influences how societies function. Predictability allows specialization. Planning allows complexity. Cold enabled this quietly by stabilizing one small part of life. The refrigerator did not change the world alone, but it contributed to a feeling that the world could be organized, that chaos could be contained, that time could be negotiated. The night reflected this change. Night stopped being a threat. It became a pause, a predictable pause. This predictability is what allows deep sleep. Deep sleep requires trust. Trust that nothing urgent will happen. Trust that systems will hold. Cold provided that trust. Food no longer pulled at attention. It no longer intruded into dreams. It waited. This waiting was reliable. Reliability calms. The mind learns patterns. The body responds. Breathing slows. Muscles relax. Sleep deepens. The refrigerator's role in this is indirect. It does not interact with sleep directly. It interacts with time. By controlling time, it supports rest. This support is quiet, invisible, often unnoticed, but deeply felt. The night becomes smooth, edges soften, thoughts drift. Tomorrow feels manageable. This is control, not dominance, but stability. Predictability does not remove freedom, it creates it. When basic needs are predictable, attention can shift from survival to reflection, from vigilance to rest. The refrigerator contributed to this shift by making food predictable, by making time less urgent, by making the night safer. This safety is subtle. It does not announce itself. It is felt as absence, the absence of worry, the absence of checking, the absence of fear. The night becomes gentle, not empty, but calm. The refrigerator stands quietly in the kitchen. It does not move. It does not speak. It works. Time moves, but slower, predictably. Tomorrow approaches without threat. Food waits, plans hold. The night passes without incident. This repetition builds a sense of order. Order reduces stress. Stress reduction improves health. Sleep improves. Life steadies. All of this emerges from one simple change. Time gained a buffer. Cold created it. Control followed. Predictability settled. The night became calmer. And because the night became calmer, everything else followed. There was a time when winter decided everything. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but steadily. Winter determined how long food would last, how much could be stored, how carefully it had to be used. Cold arrived once a year, and when it arrived, it mattered. It slowed decay. It extended time. It offered relief. But relief was temporary. When winter ended, control ended with it. Life followed this cycle. Preparation, waiting, loss. Food preservation aligned with seasons. Work intensified before cold arrived. Plans were shaped around it. Winter was not just weather. It was infrastructure. It provided cold when nothing else could. Without winter, food moved faster. Without winter, storage shortened. This dependence shaped entire societies. Calendars reflected it. Markets followed it. Trade adapted to it. Cold was seasonal. And because it was seasonal, life was segmented. Time was divided into periods of possibility and limitation. People understood this intuitively. They did not expect consistency. They expected variation. Winter was a phase, not a condition. Cold, when it came, was welcomed. But it could not be relied upon year-round. This made planning narrow. The future extended only as far as the next season. Global exchange existed, but it was constrained. Food traveled slowly. Preservation methods compensated. Salt, smoke, drying. But cold itself did not travel. It stayed where winter existed. Regions without cold adapted differently. Their food cultures reflected urgency. Their storage reflected limitation. Winter shaped inequality. Those closer to cold had advantages. Those further away relied on other methods. This geographic reality persisted for centuries. Then something shifted. Cold stopped arriving only with seasons. It stopped depending on latitude. It stopped obeying calendars. Cold became constant, not everywhere at once, not immediately, but gradually. Mechanical refrigeration removed winter from its central role. Cold no longer had to wait for snow. It no longer had to disappear in spring. It stayed. This changed the relationship between place and time. Food no longer depended on local climate in the same way. Seasons still existed, but their influence softened. Harvests still mattered, but storage expanded. Cold flattened variation. It reduced peaks and valleys. Food availability stabilized. This stability extended beyond households. Markets adapted, supply chains lengthened. Food traveled further. Longer distances became manageable, not because of speed alone, but because time could be controlled. Cold allowed delay without loss. This made global exchange practical. Products no longer needed to be consumed near their origin. They could wait, they could move, they could arrive later. Cold became a connective tissue, not visible, but essential. This did not remove seasons. It changed their role. Seasons became less decisive, less final. Winter no longer held exclusive authority over preservation. Summer no longer meant immediate spoilage. Cold neutralized extremes, not entirely, but enough. This created a world where timing felt less urgent, less constrained. The future stretched. Planning horizons expanded. Regions once dependent on local cycles integrated into larger systems. Food culture diversified. Availability widened. The world became more uniform in one sense, less tied to immediate climate. Cold provided continuity across variation. But this continuity did not feel dramatic. It felt ordinary, gradual, predictable. Cold did not announce its dominance. It simply stayed. It stayed through summer, through heat, through change. This constancy reshaped expectations. People began to expect food to be available regardless of season, not consciously, habitually. The calendar lost some of its authority. The year flattened, winter remained, but it no longer defined survival. It became weather again, not infrastructure. This shift affected more than food. It altered trade patterns, transportation, urbanization. Cities grew less dependent on local production. Cold allowed density. It allowed storage. It allowed distance. This made cities less seasonal, less reactive, more continuous. The night mirrored this change. Night once aligned with natural cycles. Cold nights preserved, warm nights threatened. Now, night behaved consistently, regardless of season. The refrigerator did not care if it was July or January. Cold stayed the same. This sameness reduced friction. Life became smoother, less punctuated by scarcity, less dependent on timing. This smoothing did not create abundance for everyone. It created predictability. Predictability reshaped behavior. People planned less defensively. They adjusted expectations. They trusted systems. Globalization followed this trust. Food systems expanded, interconnected. Cold enabled this quietly, not as a headline, but as a condition. The world adjusted around it. Trade routes lengthened. Foods crossed climates. Origins became distant. Cold bridged gaps. This did not remove complexity. It relocated it. Control moved upstream, into systems, into infrastructure, into machines. Individuals felt less pressure. Responsibility shifted outward. Cold absorbed it. The world no longer waited for winter. Winter became optional, useful, but not required. Cold no longer belonged to a season. It belonged to systems. This altered cultural rhythms. Festivals still followed seasons, but food did not depend on them as strictly. Scarcity softened. Urgency eased. The future felt longer, not infinite, but manageable. This manageability created calm, not excitement, calm. Cold as constant did not inspire awe. It inspired expectation. An expectation, when fulfilled, fades from awareness. Cold became invisible. Winter lost its centrality. The year became continuous. The world moved steadily, without dramatic shifts, without pauses dictated by climate. This steadiness supported growth, expansion, complexity, but it also normalized dependency. Cold had to stay. Systems relied on it. Its failure now mattered more. But as long as it worked, nothing felt unusual. This is how infrastructure disappears, by becoming necessary. Cold became background. The world adjusted, not emotionally, functionally. The night felt the same in summer and winter. Food rested regardless. Sleep did not change. This sameness was new. For most of history, seasons shaped nights. Now nights aligned. This alignment removed friction. Life smoothed. Time felt continuous. Cold no longer announced itself. It did not need to. It was assumed. This assumption shaped modern life, but quietly, without celebration, without conclusion. Cold as constant did not feel like progress. It felt like normal. And normal does not demand attention. The world no longer depended on winter. It depended on systems. Those systems worked, most of the time. And because they worked, the change felt complete. Nothing needed to be said. Nothing needed to be concluded. The world moved on, steadily. The kitchen is dark again, not because something has ended, but because everything has settled. The light is off. The surfaces are still. Nothing waits to be done. The night has returned to the room. The refrigerator stands where it always does. Quiet, unremarkable, present. Its shape does not change. Its door is closed. Inside, cold holds steady. The sound is there, low, even, familiar. The hum does not push forward. It does not pull attention. It simply continues. Food rests behind the door. Not because it is watched, not because it is checked, but because it is held. Milk remains unchanged. Vegetables stay as they were. Leftovers wait without urgency. Nothing moves toward decay quickly. Nothing demands thought. Food sleeps now. This phrase no longer feels new. It feels obvious. The refrigerator works so the kitchen does not have to. The night does not ask questions. It does not require decisions. The room feels complete, finished. The refrigerator takes the night shift quietly. It does not announce itself. It does not glow. Its light stays hidden. Only the sound remains. And even that is barely noticed. The house is asleep. Breathing slows in distant rooms. Beds hold bodies. Thoughts drift. The mind releases the day. No one is listening for spoilage. No one is planning meals in the dark. No one is calculating time. Cold has taken that responsibility. The refrigerator remains awake. It does not rest, but it allows rest. This exchange has become routine, so routine that it disappears from awareness. The refrigerator hum blends with the night, with distant sounds, with the building settling, with silence itself. The kitchen, once a place of constant attention, is now empty of concern. It does not call out. It does not wait. It simply exists. The refrigerator does not feel like a machine anymore. It feels like part of the house, like walls, like floors, like doors that stay closed. The night wraps around the kitchen gently. Darkness no longer conceals a risk. It signals completion. Everything that needed to be done is done. Food is handled. Time is managed. Nothing presses forward. The refrigerator holds the pause. Inside, cold stays steady. Outside, the night moves slowly. The hum continues, then fades from notice. The click comes, soft, unremarkable. Then silence returns. Not empty silence, familiar silence, the kind that allows sleep. The refrigerator remains, working, unseen, unacknowledged. This was not always true, but now it feels permanent, as if kitchens have always been this way, as if nights have always been safe for food. The repetition has erased memory. The refrigerator has succeeded by becoming invisible. The kitchen does not feel guarded. It feels trusted. The door stays closed. The light stays off. Nothing intrudes. The night holds. The refrigerator watches. Someone sleeps. The house breathes. Food waits. Time moves slowly. Nothing demands attention. Nothing needs correction. The night passes. This is the quiet end of effort, not because effort disappeared, but because it moved elsewhere, into systems, into machines, into cold that stays awake. The refrigerator hums, the kitchen sleeps, the house rests, food remains. This is how the story returns to itself, not with change, but with stillness. The night is complete. The night has no edges now. It does not press forward. It does not pull back. It simply stays. The house is still, not frozen, not empty, just settled. Breathing continues somewhere beyond the walls of the kitchen. Slow, even. The refrigerator remains awake, not alert, not tense, just present. Its work is quiet, so quiet that it no longer feels like work. Cold holds its place. It does not wander. It does not retreat. It stays where it is meant to be, inside the closed space, behind the door. Food does not move toward tomorrow. It waits, patiently, without effort, without resistance. The night passes over the house gently. Nothing changes that needs attention. Nothing requires thought. The refrigerator does not ask to be checked. It does not signal urgency. It does not glow. It does not speak. It only continues. Cold no longer disappears at night. It stays. This staying changes everything, because cold stays. Nothing else has to. Thoughts loosen. Muscles soften. The body releases weight it did not know it was holding. Sleep arrives without instruction. It comes on its own, like darkness, like quiet. The refrigerator watches over what has been left behind. Food rests. Time slows. The night moves without consequence. There is no calculation, no preparation, no final task. Everything that needed attention has already been handled. Cold holds the space. The hum fades from awareness. The pause stretches. The click arrives. Then nothing. Not silence. Rest. The house is complete. The kitchen does not wait. The future does not intrude. Tomorrow does not rush. Cold remains, so everything else can rest. Breathing deepens. The mind drifts. Images soften. Edges blur. The refrigerator continues its quiet vigilance. Unseen, unnoticed, trusted. Cold stays awake. So sleep does not have to. The night holds. Nothing asks. Nothing answers. Everything settles. Cold no longer disappears at night. It stays. So everything else can rest.